For more, we are joined by Professor Karen Hult of a Department of Political Science at Virginia Tech. Professor, thank you very much for joining us. Firstly, so we know that both President Biden and Trump both conveying messages of unity after that shooting. But does the latest incident signal the onset of another era of political violence, or do we see this as a potentially an opening, an opportunity for diffusing political tension in America?
Good morning. It's no doubt both of those things in some ways. At one point, it's important to say that no matter what President Biden said last night, unfortunately, in the United States, we have a record of violence that's linked to political campaigning that goes back well into 2 centuries ago. So this is new right now. Clearly, it's shocking. It's a source of concern. At the same time, alas, this notion of violence against people with whom one disagrees is not novel in the United States. And that's the frame in which we may want to think about this. I think certainly in the short run, there will be an effort on the Democratic side and on the Republican side as well, to be frank, to make this, if not about unity, then at least about civility and the ability to disagree, but to continue to get along in a peaceful fashion. What that means going forward, however, is that I think it does underscore for the whole world, in fact, the kinds of tensions there are and differences there are in the United States right now.
Professor Hult, just want to pick up on this point because we know that the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, actually made that particular point. Both sides need to lower the temperature, lower the rhetoric. But we also know at the same time that some prominent Republicans, like potential VP candidate J.D. Vance, the House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, both blaming the recent rhetoric against Trump. How much of a worry is this? And is it also not true that Trump is perhaps guilty himself of saying similar incendiary things about Joe Biden and the Democrats in the past as well?
Yeah, I think both of those things are absolutely true. Indeed, many Democrats would respond that though now is not the time to talk about it, much of the Republican tone and former President Trump's tone has indeed been quite hostile and talking about everything from indicting the current president to pardoning the people that were involved in the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. So there are arguably problems on both sides and guilt on both sides. More generally, it was very interesting to note the difference between, on the one hand, Mr. Trump's effort and former First Lady Melania Trump's efforts this morning to say right away, what we need to do is come together, lower the temperature of the rhetoric, and move forward. At the same time, however, Senator Lindsey Graham and other senators, including J.D. Vance, were coming out and saying quite frankly that, in fact, in their view, this was a result of the rhetoric on the Democratic side. So it's going to take a lot of attention and a lot of patience to try to turn down the rhetoric that we've been speaking about.
Professor, many observers believe the assassination attempt has changed the entire election and also the next 3 months, 4 months of campaigning. Is it possible right now to predict in what ways?
Well, this has been one of those elections that it's hard to predict much of anything. I mean, 3 weeks ago, we would not have thought we'd be having this conversation. And beyond that, we would not have thought that Mr. Biden's expertise in the office would be continually questioned over and over again. So we're in a time of volatility and great uncertainty. At the same time, I think there's a little doubt that this will, in fact, change the nature of the campaign. It likely will indeed increase the support for Mr. Trump in many parts of the country, as well as probably mobilize many of his supporters and even some of those who were more tepid in the support for Mr. Trump. There's little doubt that this will have a longer-term impact, I think.
What does it mean for Biden's campaign and that talk about him stepping down?
Well, on the one hand, it takes some of that off the front burner immediately. And yet that's going to be reinforced, especially as we move into the Republican convention and move toward the Democratic convention, because the window for Democrats who would prefer that Biden step down is beginning to get near having to close, because the Democratic convention is coming in August. So there's going to be continuing pressure, though much of it will not be as public as it's been over the last several weeks. But I think that that push is going to continue behind the scenes.
All right, Professor Hult, thank you very much. We do have to leave it there. We were speaking with Professor Karen Hult from the Department of Political Science at Virginia Tech.